What up, YouTube? How you doing? Gabe the Gen, Chaos Mash, Eric Lowry, Jamie Rose, Renee DeLees, and other YouTube subscribers that I've totally memorized the names of. Today we're gathered here because your girl dannphan made a somewhat spicy tweet. Not this one though. This one. I subverted your expectations, eh? But before we get into it, let me just read this dumb tweet that I made. Me reading the PDF comic from a campaign I backed, regretting backing such low quality writing, and dreading the day the physical arrives in the mail. I feel my heart crack. My heart is broken when this happens. And then I added to that by saying, I don't like being mean to new writers or anything, but damn, you can't always blame it on being SJW or having a porn plot. Some people are just bad writers. And I've run into this problem quite a few times with a lot of these campaigns that I've backed. I really like supporting new writers. I really like supporting people who are going independent and doing their own thing. There are also some people who just think that they can hop on board with no experience. It's just gonna be good, like, oh, I'm a better writer than most of the modern day writers in Hollywood right now, so clearly I'm going to just create art. And they take a huge risk by hiring an artist to do all the pages for them, but all the beautiful art in the world just doesn't really make up for when a story itself is just executed so poorly. And I don't want to reveal what comic this was that made me just break the way that this has, because there's a certain amount of hate thrown your way when you harshly criticize someone who's going the indie route. I know that you shouldn't have super high expectations for indie comic writers, and I don't really think I have that high of expectations. There's a lot of stuff that I'm willing to forgive, right? When it comes to indie comics, I'm kind of willing to forgive maybe typos or maybe sloppy paneling or some rushed editing. I don't know, man. The stuff that I'm not willing to forgive is when the plot itself is bad, when the characters are not real characters, when there's no emotional connection to anything that's happening at all. I can't forgive that stuff, because that's all just basic stuff. Even if you're an independent writer, you should know the concept of show don't tell. You should know not to make someone some sort of Mary Sue. You should know that characters need to be established and have some sort of chemistry with other characters that they talk to. Tate Ransom had a nice comment down here saying, I think a lot of us are intimidated by art, but figure anyone can write. Turns out it's a whole thing of its own. My book of campus stories took months to write, and a ton of edits, tweaks, and rewrites, and writing a comic is a different skill from that. It's definitely a thing that people just assume writing is an easy job. And when it comes to all these famous people doing their own crowdfunding campaigns for their comic, regardless of whether or not they are a comic writer, people just look at those dollar bills and they're like, oh, this comic isn't even good. I could totally write a comic better than that, and then I would make a ton of money from it. And then sure enough, the story is bad. I understand people need to take some time to actually improve their craft and get better at it, but if you need to take that time, then don't jump in head first with a series. Reaper is my big passion series, right? That's the one that I want to do as my main thing. But I did all these other different comics before that, and that's because I don't want to just jump the gun onto a big series that's going to take a lot of effort and take up a lot of people's time. I don't want to do that unless I'm certain that it's going to be good. Even if it's not the best thing that they've ever read, I don't want to make people suffer when they read it. Everyone wants the success, but none of the work it takes to get there. The campaign itself did, like, reach its goal, and it's nice to see indie writers reaching their goal and getting some mild success, right? But that's not enough. I also want to see indie writers succeed in making good stories, not just like financially successful stories. I want the stories to also be good. When you're bad at writing, it makes me feel bad at writing. You have to set a good example for the rest of us indies. You can't just be like some guy who muses about his lore. You have to also learn how to write. And don't get me wrong, I've participated in streams with other people promoting their comics or their books, where they'll just straight up admit on stream to everybody that they've never written anything before and they're starting off this as their first thing and it's a series, and for some reason they blatantly admit this as though it's not a huge red flag for everyone who's going to be backing it. Once again, not trying to be mean, just being completely honest. I think that you're disrespecting other creators when you just jump into this medium and think that it's gonna be easy and you're just gonna be fantastic. The first thing you write is just gonna be this masterpiece that everyone's gonna love, but everyone else has to work hard for it. Everyone else except for you. You're perfect. If you're looking for an easy job, you're gonna be disappointed because there's really no job that's gonna be easy. Every job requires some work. And if you're having an easy time doing a job, chances are you're doing a bad job. So Adam.
Yes.
You have written multiple books. You've made a collection of short stories, written a romance novel, written a fantasy novel, and you wrote a comic with me, which is the more recent thing.
Yeah.
What do you think about people who don't really have much experience writing jumping onto the Indiegogo scene and trying to start up a brand new series with all these lore ideas that they've had for like a million years?
God. The people who, like, when I say that I wrote a book or I'm writing a book or whatever, who tell me, oh yeah, I have a book, I just gotta write it down, you know? Oh, I thought of it in high school, and it's a really good, like, fantasy world. I don't want to tell you anything about it, because, like, oh, you might, you know, steal my ideas. Those people make me cringe so hard when they're like, yeah, all that time you spent writing, I'm as good as you, and I'll just do it one day. I'll just put the book together. I'm not saying you shouldn't, like, try and get good at stuff and like, improve, but, like, when you draw a picture, like, when I draw a picture, it's terrible, right? Because I don't put the hours in every single day drawing pictures. But there are people who really, really practice at that, and like when you see their art, you can tell if it's good instantly. It's a very like obvious thing, but with writing, it's sort of somewhat more nebulous, and so some people feel like, oh, mine is just as good. It's fine, it's good. Yeah, I'm a great writer. If you're a good artist, you should think about how many hours and how many years it's taken to get to the point that you're at, and if you haven't put in an equivalent amount of time into writing, you're a bad writer, without exception. There's no way to get good at something without getting good at something. You have to actually like practice and learn and really, you have to really fucking want it, right? If you want to be an artist and you really want to be an artist and you work hard at that, that's great. But just adding words to your pictures, it's not enough. You have to really work at it to be good at writing. I've gone to a million workshops with people who are like, the classic line used to drive me up a wall. I haven't heard someone say this with a straight face in like a very long time, but oh, I used to be a good writer in middle school, but then I got more I got better at writing essays in like high school, and I just haven't felt like writing a really good like best-selling novel, you know? I just haven't done it. I remember there was this one girl who said that, and her writing was terrible. It was so bad. The first sentence didn't read, like it wasn't a sentence. And like everyone was like, oh, you're like so good and stuff. I really felt like I was there, which is what that translates to is, no one raised their hand and I need to participate in every class and so I can get a good grade. And so I just say...
the line that you pull out of the hat so that you say something.
I really felt like I was there. And it was so aggravating to me because I was trying to improve my settings, and like, if you can't take feedback at all, like if you can't take any criticism, you'll never be good. Never. I would divide into several different skills that would make up the general skill of writing. One would be being able to assess your own work and tell whether it's good or bad.
That is quite a skill, yes.
Probably the most important, because at the end of the day, you are, you know, as they say, judge, jury, and executioner. Like, you're the one at the end who decides what goes into the book.
Yes.
And the second skill is processing critique. So you have to be someone who can be likable enough people will give you critiques. You have to be someone who is receptive enough to all critiques that people aren't going to be scared to give you criticism, because then that's just less criticism you get, and that's a very valuable resource, is critiques. And then you have to know what critiques to take and like what to listen for when you're getting a critique. When someone tells you, I didn't like this character, they should use a lightsaber, the only part of the critique that is going to be relevant is what they felt about the character. They didn't like the character, but then what about the character they didn't like? If you can get out of people what parts of the character they don't like, you can figure out where they might have felt those little parts of the character, and then identify those little sections of the story, and then work on those sections to see if you could depict those traits better, or change the traits, or, you know, that's where you can really start to work on parts of your story. But if you start to take everyone's advice on what to actually do, you're going to end up with a Frankenstein story. It's not that someone is going to always have bad advice and you just never listen to them. It's that people will be wrong and right at different parts of the story, and when you're getting critique, you have to really figure out what's true. But if you can't take any critique, or you don't take anyone's advice, it's going to be bad. I guess moderated perfectionism is something. I don't know if that's the main thing, but that is something. If you're too perfectionist, it'll just never get done, and it might not even be good at the end of all of this like fussing over every single detail, because, you know, sometimes you can edit something even too much. You can fuss over something too much, and then it starts to get this feel like a folded piece of paper that's been all folded and unfolded from your pocket a million times. You can tell, like when I read something, I know how much it's been edited, but you have to care if it's good. I was taught the fact that the most important skill I'll ever have is being able to tell if it's good and being able to edit my own stuff. Because that is really like the iris through which your improvement is going to come. Maybe another important thing is you have to be okay with being bad. So like, the first time you do anything, you're going to be bad at it. If the first book you put out is going to be your like
big magnum opus.
Yeah, where you've worked on, there's so much lore, dude. There's so much lore. Let me tell you about all the lore. Oh man. Dude, so I set up this universe in high school, and let me tell you about the lore, okay? You have to be okay with doing a bad job, and then looking at it, and then doing it again, and improving. You have to be okay with sucking, and you have to, like, be able to recognize when you're improving and when you're not. When I first wrote Horizon Quest with you, I made sure to use you as a resource because you've written other comics. I've written lots of stuff. I've written, you know, poems and short stories and whatever, but I've never written a comic. So while I'm good at writing generally, in order to translate the story I want to tell into comic form, I had you to teach me how to translate it. And I was like, I had a bunch of different things, and I was like, how would this work visually? Would this work in a comic? You were like, no. And so I changed it, and we got to, like, you like helped me to translate the story into a comic form. And, you know, some sections just got cut completely because they don't work. Some stuff would work really good in animation or a live action or a book, and some stuff works good in the comics. You write 3 pages and the first page is garbage, right? Because you're improving so rapidly in the beginning. Like, there's so much you can improve so quickly that literally, I'm not saying it facetiously, I mean like literally, you write 3 pages, page 1 is going to be garbage, and you write 3 more pages, and page 3 is going to be trash. I started off with short stories, and in doing short stories, you can improve super rapidly. I don't know if that's like good advice though, because novels are very different from short stories. So like the general writing skill that I gained from writing short stories, not all of it translated into novels once I started writing novels. It does give you the opportunity to sort of snapshot your skill as you're writing like you know, 7 pages, you can really refine and learn to edit those like 7 pages and make something really good, that doesn't take like a super long time to like polish and finish. And then you can also get critiques on it because it's not that long that you could convince someone to read it. It insults me to some degree that people sort of assume that without any effort or any work or any real drive or desire, they can be as good at writing as anyone else. I couldn't lie and pretend to be good at drawing like you kind of can with writing, where people are like, oh, it's an art form, so like, you know, there's no rules, man. It's meant to, oh, the rules are meant to be broken. Just because you can break rules does not mean that there's no rules. Like, you can't just literally go like on the keyboard like until it's done. Like,
good story.
There's a real science to it. Like, there's a real methodology to writing. And you need to learn it. Like, you need to learn how to write. Like, you can't just slap the keyboard until it's done, or like kind of just like go with whatever you feel, right? There is really like a mechanical part of writing beyond this like art, like, ooh, like dreams and stuff, right? So I was like getting my hair cut, and the guy cutting my hair was like, oh man, you know what you should do? You should like smoke a bunch of weed. And I was like, the fuck? That would make me terrible at writing. And he's like, nah, man, it's an art form, so there's no rules.
Yes, if there's one thing that'll make you good at writing, it's not being sober.
Yeah, it'll be manic depressive, and then like once you're in your mania, oh my god, you'll write this amazing stuff. That's not true.
You might write a lot of stuff. That doesn't mean it's amazing.
What that is, basically, is you're lowering your inhibitions, and so you're more willing to just go out and do it, and you're getting over, maybe if you're too much of a perfectionist, maybe that will help you to get the stuff on paper that you can then fix later. But a certain amount of perfectionism is important to make something perfect, right? I wouldn't recommend alcohol for doing that, or being bipolar. If you've ever had one of your bipolar friends give you their like 30-page story that they wrote when they were manic last night, they're terrible. Writing is a real skill, and it requires real work to learn this skill.
And I'm known for being extremely harsh in my reviews. I don't really regret being harsh. I feel like it's good to be honest about how you feel about a story, and I don't like being pressured into not really saying how I feel about something because someone might get upsetty spaghetti. And I don't think I should have to lower my standards so low as to give a comic a good rating even if I hated it. I really don't think anyone should lower their standards. I think our standards are low enough. Have you seen the American comic industry? We have low enough standards. We need to start raising them, not lowering them. Now, in the past, I've done some streams or some videos with people who are promoting their own comics, and they tend to be indie writers, and sometimes I don't even know who these people are. Like 90% of these people who have asked to do these streams with me to promote their stuff, I've never talked to them before in my life. It's just an example of me being Mrs. Nice Dan fan. No more Mrs. Nice Dan fan. I'm gonna knock that out of the window because I realize that I'm kind of complicit in just promoting anybody's comic. We're gonna set up a gate here. If it even crosses your mind that you should message me and ask me to promote your comic for you, at the bare minimum, send me pages, send me a script or something. Let me look at it and I'll decide. I'll decide whether or not I would actually want to promote this comic. Because I feel like people would take these streams a lot more seriously if I could personally give your comic or your writing a glowing review. If I personally said, yes, I can vouch for this, people would find these promotional streams to be much more valuable. How can you tell anybody to go back a campaign for a comic when you haven't read it yourself? I don't really think it's fair, so I'm not gonna do that anymore. We're done. We're done with that. Honestly, I shouldn't have been doing that from the beginning. Not that I'm saying the PDF in question here is from a guy whose campaign I promoted. I'm just saying, in general, this has pushed me to the brink. This has pushed me to being like, you know what? We can't just blindly promote things. And I can already see the angry comments. The angry comments, oh dannphan, you're not going to promote something that you dislike? Yeah, I'm not. If I were honest with you guys and I said, hey, I don't actually like this guy's comic, would you buy it? No. And the solution to that is not me keeping my mouth shut. The solution to that is indie writers writing well and actually practicing. Remember this thing called practice? I've been told it makes perfect. And if you really work at your craft, if you really care, if you care about writing, you will practice to get better at it. I'm taking a stand for what I believe in. And what I believe in is good comics. Alright, so that's all I got to say about the subject. Like the video, I have a website, burningstarcomics.net, yay! And yes, I only publish comics that I feel like have some form of potential. And you know, I'm starting to think maybe if I wouldn't publish it, maybe I shouldn't promote it. Program restart.